The New South Wales Government today privatised Port Botany and Port Kembla with gross proceeds of $5.07 billion net $4.3 billion. The money's already earmarked for Restart New South Wales, the O'Farrell Government's once impecunious infrastructure fund. 3 consortia reportedly bid for the monopoly asset, a 99-year operating lease. The winner, Industries Funds Management, comprises 80% Australian superannuation funds and 20% Arab money through the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. I spoke to Treasurer Mike Baird this afternoon. Treasurer, welcome back. That was quick, wasn't it? The tenders closed on Monday and you make an announcement on Friday.
Well, I think what the result shows today, Quentin, is an incredible achievement for New South Wales. I mean, the price we received was amazing, the risk profile was right, and really that's is the conclusion of the deal. And when we assess these things, I mean, obviously there's a whole range of parameters that come into it, but ultimately you're looking for the best price with the lowest possible risk, and this bid was both of those, and it's an incredible result.
I know due diligence, commercial in confidence, but it's all done in secret. I understand just because of the financial journals saying there are about 3 bidders. Can you confirm that? So they've got a competitive process going with 3 bidders?
Well, I think that, I mean, obviously, I can't, for confidentiality reasons, talk about the makeup of
the Canadians
who was there and what was
the Canadian super funds were in there.
But I think what I can see on what the numbers tell you today, Quentin, there was incredible competitive tension. You don't achieve a result like that, over $5 billion for these assets, for the infrastructure of this state, without competitive tension. I just think it shows that if you run the right sort of transaction with the right process at the right time, the right asset, you can get to a position where you achieve a result like this, and I think it's an incredible result for New South Wales.
Well, I know you want to be Mike Baird, the Treasurer, who delivered an effective privatisation, but please explain how you've exceeded the retention value of these very valuable assets.
Well, I mean, it comes back, I think, to what I just ran through, Quinn. I mean, ultimately, what pension funds and super funds around the world are looking for long-term assets with nice defensive cash flows that is pretty stable in economies that are growing. And New South Wales and Sydney ticked all the boxes together with Port Kembla in relation to that. So there's a scarcity of opportunities and an absolute huge appetite of funds. You bring those two together in the right way, and this is the important thing. I think when the Labor government was undertaking transactions, they tried to avoid Parliament. We went right down the centre of Parliament. We said this is the transaction that needs to be done to deliver the best value for the state. And today, I think we have done that, and it's great news for New South Wales.
I'm sure you're going to be congratulated, but did you calculate the retention value on the government cost of capital at 6% or the private sector cost of capital at anything up to 20%? It's an important element of a debate about what is retention value and whether by what level you have exceeded the retention value, which you claim is 25 times earnings, you've said.
Yeah, and that's the basis for determining, Quinn. And I admire the analysis you've done on that. But ultimately, what it comes down to is what is the earnings and what is the multiple of that. And that benchmark, which can be benchmarked globally, domestically, is an incredible result.
Well, I was at your press conference this afternoon, and it sounds as though you've already spent the money on WestConnex, 30% going to regional areas, other areas in infrastructure to restart New South Wales, as you call it. But we're making a big, if you spend that money on WestConnex, for example, that's the road that sweeps all the way through from Parramatta Road all the way up to the arterial, to the orbital, past the Port Botany. Aren't we, in fact, spending all this taxpayers' money to improve what are called the pinch points of Port Botany to make it more effective and profitable for the private operator?
Well, I think anyone going up and down the M4 or the M5 would tell you that they need some congestion relief, which is exactly what WestConnex does. And yes, it does provide some improved efficiency into the port and airport precincts, which is well overdue. The other government spoke about it, and I think that's the difference here, Quentin. What you saw from the former government, and you've seen that federally, is there'll be brochures that'll come, there'll be videos that'll be put together, and they'll try and hoodwink the public that things are going to happen. Well, the truth is, if you want to actually build this infrastructure, you need to take some decisions. Revenue's down, so where's the money coming from? We've looked at a balance sheet. We've leased this asset and we're putting that money to work. So the WestConnex project, the government's commitment, $1.8 billion has been allocated today. Now that is going to happen. Pacific Highway, $400 million. The Princess Highway, $170 million. Bridges to the bush, bridges all over regional New South Wales.
Port Kembla's listening. Tell them what they're getting.
Well, they get a double benefit. There's $100 million of new infrastructure on the back of this transaction today that's going into the Illawarra region. Money that otherwise wouldn't have come. There's $170 million that's going to complete the Berry Bypass, Stage 2. The money was allocated on the basis this transaction went ahead, so there's $270 million come to that region. But it's going across the state, Quentin. So no longer do you have governments sort of putting wish lists up. You have sensible, economically determined plans with the money allocated towards them.
Let's make it clear. You've lifted the cap on the movements of containers through Port Botany as a part of this deal, haven't you?
Yes, that is part of the transaction. The port was in the process of seeking exactly that.
There's a downside for the locals with that, isn't there?
Well, no, I don't think there is. The former Labor government approved an expansion of the port, which was putting it well and truly through the cap, which means that the port company was coming to the government and saying, listen, we need to remove this because we've got $1 billion invested that provides additional capacity from the port and into the broader New South Wales economy. But we have, importantly on that, address what a sensible, responsible government should do. The WestConnex project provides relief in relation to that. The pinch points program provides relief around that.
This is a monopoly asset, Treasurer, and like everybody's aware, the monopoly control of Sydney Airport, for example. Aren't you giving the new monopoly owner of Port Botany a chance to gouge the shipping lines and through fees and charges, control of fees and charges, which can only flow on to the rest of us?
Well, no, and this is the important point as well, because it's not only a matter of price, it's the risks that come through this transaction. And we've ensured that front and centre are part of this. If the new lessee, and be clear, their mantra are very much very experienced investment managers across the world. They have similar infrastructure assets across the world, and their mantra is that we want to work with local stakeholders, local governments, local communities.
They do have experience. No complaining from ship owners about gouging.
No, so the additional protection measures we have.
A good corporate citizen, you say?
They are a good corporate citizen, but at the same time, if they want to increase charges, and that obviously impacts tenants across the port, they have to put that to government. Now, government then have the option, if we're not satisfied, to refer that to IPART for overview. Now, that is
some regulatory lever you can
There is an independent oversight in terms of the regulator, and that is an important measure that we were determined to include, obviously, as part of this transaction.
Since you've been the Treasurer, you've refinanced the desalination plant and got some private sector capital up front from that. You've sold the retailers, the energy retailers. What's next on the list? What about the Port of Newcastle?
Well, there's no plans for that, and we have followed a very clear strategy here, Quentin. The finances we inherited, a very difficult position. There's $2.5 billion a year less in revenue, huge infrastructure backlogs. So what do? So we've announced the asset transactions, the desalination plant, done in a way, very good results for the state, $2.3 billion versus a 1.9 expectation, and we have the result today on the ports. The next is the electricity generators, which we are working through as we speak. And all of this, Quentin, is about providing a surety to people across New South Wales that the money required to put into the infrastructure that is being promised is there. And so it's an old asset going into a new asset. And
you'll be seeking a mandate at the next election, the 2015 state election, to sell, to privatise the poles and wires.
Well, I mean, the Premier's made it clear, Quentin, on that if that was something that was going to be considered by our party and by the Cabinet, it would ultimately then have to come to the people of New South Wales to seek a mandate. Now, I think that what we've demonstrated to the people of New South Wales is that we are responsible, we are making the tough but right decisions for the state, and we're delivering the funds required to build the infrastructure. I mean, for too long, Quentin, I mean, it was in my community, every community across the state. There were maps, there were brochures, there were videos, but it never came. And the only way to deliver it is undertaking actions like this when revenue is under such pressure as it is. So we're doing everything possible to deliver that infrastructure, and today is a very important day in that story.
You've got your next budget coming up in June, but the regrettable fact is we'll still be in deficit.
Well, we'll have to wait for the budget. That's a good try, Clinton. But we are in a difficult position. You can't lose $2.5 billion a year and not have an impact. There's a whole range of savings measures that we've announced to get our day-to-day budget into order. We need to stick to that. And ultimately what we're about is providing a long-term path back to a sustainable surplus, which means that we've got flexibility in improving the services we have, and at the same time additional money to build the infrastructure. What today means we don't have to borrow to undertake some of that additional infrastructure, which helps the rating and is a responsible thing to do. And I think that's exactly what we're demonstrating to the people of New South Wales.